The hum of the city night echoed as a luxury hotel lobby gleamed under its golden chandeliers. Guests lined up, dragging suitcases ready to settle into soft beds after long journeys. But for one woman, the polished glass doors became a wall of humiliation. A black woman, dressed modestly but with quiet authority, stepped to the counter, only to be met with cold stares and dismissive tones. Her request was simple: a room. The response, however, was a cruel denial, whispered with prejudice hidden beneath a facade of professionalism. The staff smirked, assuming she didn't belong. What no one realized was that she wasn't a guest. She wasn't desperate for shelter. She was the owner of the entire hotel, and in minutes, her decision would change every life in that lobby. Amara Johnson had built her empire from nothing. Raised in a working-class neighborhood where opportunities seemed scarce, she understood the value of persistence and resilience. After years of study, countless sacrifices, and endless late nights, she became a respected entrepreneur. Hotels weren't just a business for her. They were a vision, a promise to create safe, welcoming spaces where everyone felt valued. This hotel, in particular, was one of her proudest investments. It stood tall in the heart of the city, known for its elegance, five-star service, and exclusivity. Amara had acquired it months ago, quietly overseeing renovations and upgrading its management systems. She believed in empowering staff, creating jobs, and ensuring guests experienced more than just luxury. They experienced dignity, but Amara also knew a painful truth. Prejudice did not vanish in polished spaces. Discrimination could wear suits, ties, and name tags, smiling politely while silently deciding who was welcome and who was not. On this particular night, Amara had arrived unannounced. She preferred blending in, observing how her staff treated strangers when they didn't know the owner was watching. She wore no designer labels, carried no entourage, and booked no reservation in advance. All she had was her confidence and an expectation that her employees would uphold the hotel's values. Instead, what she encountered was the raw face of bias. At the front desk, the receptionist frowned the moment she approached. Instead of a warm greeting, Amara was met with suspicion. She noticed the subtle exchange of glances between staff, the smirk of a concierge nearby, and the way a manager hovered as though preparing to refuse her. She asked for a room. Their answer was no. No apologies, no explanations, just excuses about availability. Behind her, other guests, white, wealthier looking, were checked in with smiles, their keys handed over without question. Amara felt the sting of injustice burn deep, but she said nothing. Not yet. The rejection was not just a refusal of service, it was an insult. A message carved into the silence of the lobby. You do not belong here. Amara stood still, her face calm, but her mind replayed the moment with sharp clarity. The receptionist's eyes darting over her clothes, the manager's clipped tone, the deliberate way they overlooked her presence while fussing over other guests. It was more than inconvenience. It was racism, dressed in polite uniforms. She glanced around. A family nearby avoided eye contact. A businessman waiting for his key pretended not to notice, though his smirk betrayed amusement. A young couple raised eyebrows, whispering about how people should stay where they can afford. The weight of their assumptions pressed against Amara like a storm, but Amara was no stranger to storms. She had weathered them all her life, dismissed in boardrooms, underestimated in negotiations, spoken over by men who assumed her gender and skin tone made her less capable. Each slight had sharpened her, not broken her, and now, here, in the very building she owned, those same prejudices played out. The irony was bitter. These employees, who owed their jobs to her investment, treated her like an outsider. They had no idea that their arrogance and disdain were not just unethical, they were self-destructive. Amara chose not to reveal herself immediately. Instead, she observed, noting every detail. She watched as a white guest stumbled in, clearly without a reservation. The staff went out of their way to find him a room. Moments later, a well-dressed woman approached the desk and keys were handed over without hesitation. The message was clear. Access here wasn't about availability, it was about appearance. With each passing second, tension tightened around her like a vice. Amara's silence was not weakness, it was calculation. She knew timing mattered. A storm doesn't reveal itself in a whisper. It crashes down when the world least expects it. Finally, the manager leaned forward, voice laced with authority. "I'm afraid we're fully booked," he said, his eyes narrowing as if daring her to challenge him. Behind him, the receptionist chuckled under her breath, a sound she tried to disguise as a cough. Amara met their gaze evenly. She thanked them, her voice steady, then stepped back. She did not argue or plead. Instead, she pulled out her phone and began typing, summoning the people who truly held power within this building, her executive team, her legal counsel, and her head of operations. The staff thought they had dismissed her. In reality, they had triggered the beginning of their own reckoning. Minutes later, the glass doors slid open again. This time, it wasn't a lone black woman in casual clothes. It was a team of professionals, her senior managers, lawyers, and trusted assistants. Their presence shifted the atmosphere instantly. Guests paused, staff stiffened, and whispers filled the air. At the center of it all, Amara stepped forward, no longer silent. She carried herself with unmistakable authority. The same receptionist who had sneered now stood frozen, eyes wide. The manager, who had confidently denied her, paled as recognition dawned. Amara didn't need to raise her voice. Her silence carried more weight than their excuses. Her team dispersed, pulling files, checking systems, and documenting behavior. The hotel lobby transformed into a courtroom, and the staff who had mocked her now stood as defendants before their own employer. Every decision they had made that night was exposed. Their lies about availability, their selective courtesy, their prejudice dressed as professionalism. Guests watched in stunned silence as the truth unraveled. Finally, Amara spoke, not with anger, but with finality. She announced who she was, the owner of the hotel, the woman who had signed their paychecks, the leader who had trusted them to uphold values of fairness and dignity. And yet, in her absence, they had chosen discrimination. The staff tried to stammer excuses. The manager attempted to frame it as a misunderstanding. However, excuses crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The truth was undeniable. In front of everyone, guests, employees, and onlookers, Amara made her decision. Effective immediately, the staff member responsible for this incident has been terminated. Their positions dissolved not with quiet HR letters, but with public accountability. The silence that followed was deafening. The same employees who had dismissed her as insignificant were now stripped of authority, their arrogance dismantled in the very lobby they had controlled. As the staff collected their belongings under the watchful eyes of security, the atmosphere of the hotel shifted. Guests whispered about what they had just witnessed. Some looked uncomfortable, while others nodded with quiet approval, and a few discreetly recorded videos that would inevitably surface online. Amara did not linger on their disgrace. Her focus was larger. This moment was not about revenge, it was about principle. The firing of her staff sent a message louder than any speech could. Discrimination has no place in spaces meant for service and hospitality. In the following days, the story spread beyond the hotel walls. Local news outlets reported on the incident, framing it as a powerful stand against workplace racism. Social media amplified it, with countless strangers applauding Amara's courage and clarity. But Amara knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. Bias did not disappear overnight. Prejudice was not confined to hotel lobbies. It lived in boardrooms, schools, and everyday interactions. Still, every act of accountability mattered. Every stand taken inspired others to confront injustice in their own lives. The hotel itself entered a new chapter. With new staff, new training, and renewed leadership, it began to embody the vision Amara had always carried. A place where luxury meant not just comfort, but also dignity. A place where every guest, regardless of their appearance, felt welcome. For Amara, the night of humiliation became a story of empowerment. What had started as rejection ended in justice, not just for herself, but for the message it carried to anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. And for those watching, Whether in that lobby or through the retelling, the question remained. When prejudice stands at the door, will we remain silent, or will we use our power to open it for all?